That night when I was sitting in this cell, concrete walls and floors and everything, I just had a kind of moment. I was like, wow, I really have made some terrible decisions, and I've landed myself here. I need to make a change. Part of being a good founder is being able to learn quickly and learn enough about something that you know what's going on and you know which people you need to go to get help. How do you make systemic change, or how do you make a kind of impact in an issue that is so large that it feels impossible? I think it starts with storytelling and reflecting on your own journey.
My name is Justine Rogers, and you are listening to We Built This Thing. On today's episode, we're chatting with Michael Kwan. Michael is the co-founder and CEO of Praxis Youth, a not-for-profit dedicated to improving youth justice outcomes by providing housing and other support services to at-risk youth. Michael's team and he were recently awarded with the Peter Farrell People's Choice Award for their work in this area. And we have Michael as a guest today, and he's going to be speaking about his own experiences being incarcerated and the journey from being incarcerated right through to being a founder of this organisation. We're going to get right into the nature of this company and how he has built it, but I really want to get into his backstory first because it's critical to how this business has evolved. So we're going to start back at a quite a difficult part of his story, but it is critical, I think, to hear it. If you don't mind starting, when you were 14, Michael, you left home, and by 16, you're in youth detention. And I just think I'd read, and I was just so struck by you believing on your first night inside that things were going to change for you. How did you even have that belief in that moment, in that context?
Yeah, I think that it was a long journey, back at 14 and going to 15, 16. I was facing a lot of kind of difficult circumstances and making some poor choices as well. That night when I was kind of sitting in this cell, concrete walls and floors and everything, I just had a kind of moment. I was like, wow, I really have made some terrible decisions, and I've landed myself here. I need to make a change. I think it was even more than belief. I like to think of hope as having a very strong belief paired with a ability to take action. So in that moment, I believe that I could make a change and that I need to take action. I didn't know what that action looked like at that moment, but I knew that I was gonna change.
And in terms of getting you into youth detention, is there something that most people don't understand about the path to, say, your childhood into offending or into finding yourself involved in the justice system?
I think it's a very, very complex question, but the way that I see it is there's four kind of pillars. There's your housing stability, your involvement with education or employment, your mental health, and your connection to community and sense of belonging. For me, all four of those things were just terrible when I was young, and that paired with some poor decision making as a young teenager, that really was what landed me there.
And I've read when I was learning about you that you had some real key people who believed in you. What do you think they saw in you that you couldn't see in yourself?
Yeah, I think I'm actually not sure. I just know that I'm eternally grateful. I remember that there was a teacher at when I went back to school when I was inside, and there was an English teacher, and I'd say he'd be about 66, and he delayed his retirement just to continue helping me with my English and my HSC. So it was absolutely amazing. I wouldn't have been able to get the mark that I did get without his help. There were chaplains, there were mentors. So I don't know, to be honest, but I just know that I'm grateful and I wouldn't be here today without their support.
And what did getting your HSC and then going to university mean to you at that time?
I think that then it was actually the first time in my life that I had committed to something over a long period of time. I'd gone back to school into year 10 after not being in school for a couple of years, and then did year 11 and year 12. It was an accomplishment that took a couple of years of doing the work every single day, and that's something that I had never done before. So it was huge. I think the power of education itself as well, not just getting the piece of paper at the end of the day, but the process of learning and understanding how you learn was really important for me, I guess, growing up into my own person.
And were you on campus? Were you able to travel to university at the time?
So when I was doing my HSC and I was inside, so that was completely correspondence, writing on a piece of paper, sending it out to Sydney, no internet, no ChatGPT. Then when I started university, I was actually the first young person approved to go out to campus by myself to attend classes. So I'd go on the train, come out to my classes, and then go back in the evening and stay at the centre overnight until I was released.
They must have seen something in you then to let you kind of go on your own.
Apparently, yeah.
You still haven't thought about what it is that you were kind of signalling about where you were going?
I think that I was showing that I was really committed to change. I was very committed to my studies. I did put a lot of hard work in. I'd stay up doing, kind of homework stuff, but really, yeah, I'm not too sure.
But did that whole experience, and I don't want to sum it up briefly, but did that whole thing give you a sense of responsibility for other people? Because it seems like a lot of things went right for you in a really difficult situation. And I'm just wondering if Praxis Youth, and we're going to talk about that now, but was there an intention to sort of operationalize what went well for you to get you out of this situation that you're in?
So I think in our youth justice system, its intent is to rehabilitate. In reality, that is not how it works. If you don't advocate for yourself and you don't, take the steps to change, make change for yourself, it doesn't happen. You could spend years in there and come out the same person that you were when you first came in, if you don't, advocate for yourself. So I was able to do that. I was very lucky to be able to do that. Over the years of going through education, I learned, how to communicate my thoughts and, what I wanted for myself. So that, led to bigger and bigger things. So eventually I was going to university. For the majority of young people, they don't have the ability to advocate for themselves. They don't have the communication skills. They don't know what the possibilities are.
Because who are you talking to when you say advocating to? Are you?
Yeah, so everything is kind of gatekept by staff and by different levels of management and risk assessments. So even for something as simple as getting enrolled in a short TAFE course, that might take weeks to months to get approved. There's the funding question as well. Everything is risk assessed and a long process.
So for people hearing about Praxis Youth for the first time, what are the problems that it's solving?
So when I was released, I was one of very few people to go into my own private rental. I'd been working a part-time job. I was studying at university and I secured a rental. This is, really something that no one gets to do. It's very, very rare. And for me, it was very difficult to get that process approved. There was a huge push for me to go back to environments that would not have been helpful for me. And, I studied engineering. I guess any engineer will agree with me. I think the big thing that we do is take really big problems and break them down. We are, being trained how to solve problems. And it's with that kind of lens, I looked back on my experience of exiting custody and looking at the landscape of what support is there. And there was a huge gap and really still is a huge gap. It's very hard to get safe, secure housing upon release. It's difficult to get a job at all, let alone as a young person with no work experience potentially coming out of custody. There's a huge gap there.
So, what is it like psychologically when you leave sort of youth detention? Like sort of what do young people need? Because I would have thought initially I would have thought housing might be needed last in a way, but in Praxis Youth, it's housing led. And then I think you then get casework help. Is that the model?
So we really are focused on housing first. We take the approach that you need housing, not just a roof over your head, but a place to feel like you belong, that you have some ownership over. You can't have a job without having an address, without having a home. Hard to have a sense of community. So yeah, we really do believe you have to have that housing first. So our kind of model, our program, we do 4 weeks from the point of a young person leaving, focusing on those 4 pillars I mentioned. So making sure they have secure housing, getting them some type of income, employment, and seeing if they can get involved in education, and then supporting them in their mental health and building a community around them. So we're really focused on being a relational kind of point for them to come to with, okay, I'm struggling with this, I'm finding this hard, building rapport so that they feel like that they're supported.
Who do you work with as Praxis Youth? Is it just you, or have you got a team, and who are you engaging with to supply this model?
Yeah, so I lead the organisation and have a team of caseworkers that work directly with the young people, and I kind of oversee that. And in the non-profit space, we're a registered non-profit. It's quite different to a typical business landscape. We don't so much have competitors as we do have allies and people that we are working with. We're all trying to come together and band together to solve these huge issues. So yeah, we're really focused on partnerships. We work closely with Conflict Pathways, another non-profit that works with young people in the justice system. We're making connections with community legal centres and other non-profits, universities, that type of thing.
And can you talk about some of the outcomes that you see are working, like what evidence that you're seeing that your model's actually helping?
Yeah, so just at the beginning of this year, we had our kind of first little pilot program finish up, and it was super encouraging. We helped a young person into their own university pathway, which was incredible to see, both in stable, independent housing situations, and are both still on really good trajectories. We've just started with our next cohort. We're going to be working with up to 24 young people before around August. And yeah, we're seeing some positive stuff. It's a very difficult, landscape. There's a lot of complex issues that a young person can be facing. But yeah, we do have pretty strict, evaluation frameworks that we stick to make sure that we're doing the right thing.
Is there anything distinct about what you're doing today that's more challenging, say, with the internet and access to other influencers, online with the manosphere or other things or other groups online that can be influencers? Is it another pressure, or is that not so?
I think that there's 2 parts to that. First of all is the influence on the young people we support. So seeing influencers over YouTube and like social media that can be negative for them. Sometimes that can be difficult to break down. That is actually not reality to be driving a $500,000 car. So that's one element is changing their perception. I think the other and the more dangerous part is the perception of public society on criminals and these kind of labels. It's very easy to dehumanize kids. Well, these kids are from age 10 through to 18, and ignore the situations that led to them committing crimes. So people with really complex trauma, being homeless when you're young, not having social connection. I think there's a really complex story behind each young person. And we need to remember that these are people, these are kids, and they've done the wrong thing, and there has to be consequences for that. But if we dehumanize them, it's a really dangerous path.
So in you saying that, it really strikes me how you're doing something that you've lived yourself, and how do you kind of manage having a sort of lived experience as well as trying to develop certain business skills and all the other things? So how are you managing being having lived it as well as trying to be this founder of an organisation?
Yeah, I think it's difficult, and in our society now, you're all over the news. There's all of these terrible stories. It really feels overwhelming. Cost of living is insane right now. I think it's very easy to feel like, what can I actually do? Can I actually make an impact? And yeah, I think I have a very strong connection to Praxis Youth and this justice space because I have lived it. As a founder and a CEO, it's your job to be the face of the organisation. I think that it can be counterproductive if you are the business. There has to be a solid model behind the idea. So yeah, I think it's a fine line to walk. Yes, I have this lived experience and it's my story, but I am not the business model. There's the business model and there's me, if that makes sense.
So I guess what expertise and skills have you had to learn on the go?
Yeah, it's been a
Building this
steep learning curve. There's many things.
Like,
So
how have you even? Who's helped you, or what's helped you, and how have you
yeah,
even started?
combination. I mean, YouTube's been awesome. I've had a lot of great mentors, but it's all the little things. Learning how to use Xero and how to process payroll. How to use WordPress. We've had nightmares in the past week with migrating off WordPress.com to WordPress.org, which I had no idea that they were separate things. lots of little things, but I think that's part of being a good founder, is being able to learn quickly and learn enough about something that you know what's going on and which people you need to go to get help. You don't need to be an expert at everything, but I think you need to get your head around things in such capacity that you know who to go to.
And so, what do you think has been the hardest part of turning a mission into an organisation?
I think that it's very difficult as a non-profit. There is no kind of path to profitability. We're not going to break even. We are reliant on philanthropic funding, and in that sense, we are trying to do a lot with little resources, and that's kind of just the nature of what being a non-profit is in Australia. So I think that's challenging.
What stage is Praxis Youth up to now in terms of its development?
Yeah, so we just got funding from Waratah Education Foundation, which was awesome. So we're going to do some great stuff with them. We incorporated in September of last year, and it's a bit more complex with a non-profit than just a normal business. There's all of the kind of compliance, registration stuff we have to do. We have to have a board of directors and proper governance. So
what's that Waratah support going to mean for you guys?
So yeah, we've just been able to bring on a new caseworker who's going to be leading the program with young girls who are in custody and coming out of custody. And yeah, support looks a lot different than for the guys. And yeah, so on track to support 24 young people pretty intensively over the next couple of months.
How do your friends and family see you now? I mean, you mentioned when you left, there was a lot of pressures to kind of go back to that kind of a certain way of living. And maybe, I'm not saying all those friends are still around, but just generally, does it feel different now? And are people proud of you?
Yeah, it's a lot different now. I mean, I've been able to build up my relationship with my dad and my siblings again, which has been awesome. I have a really supportive group of mates. And, thinking about where I am now compared to, 5 years, 10 years ago, it's crazy. Yeah, leading an organisation, advocating for social justice for these young kids. Yeah, it's really special, and I have a great network of people backing me.
Do you feel pressure now to just be basically perfect? Do you feel it all can you just, I'm just saying in between being an angel and, and not an angel. Do you feel like sometimes you can just slob out and watch maths and just not be perfect all the time? Do you feel the burden of now that you have to almost always be kind of a good and virtuous person? Can you just sometimes not be a little bit?
Yeah, I think that it's a bit of a pulling back and forth thing. On one side we get told, make sure to take care of yourself and take a break and have a holiday. On the other hand, it's you're in your 20s, work 13, 14-hour days every day, you'll get over it. But yeah, I think it's just about finding the balance day to day. Like I'm big on health and fitness. Fitness was a big thing for me, for my mental health, and taught me a lot about how dedication works when I was coming through custody. Same thing now, so I'll make sure to stay on top of my gym, and take a break when I need it. That kind of self regulation is important. Yes, we need to work really hard. I work very hard. I work long days, but self regulating when I need it is still important. Yeah, I think there is a lot of responsibility. I work in a space where things are very high stakes. If we stuff up with a young person, we that could mean that young person, potentially their kids, even their kids, that they could be in a cycle of incarceration. What we do has effects for potentially generations. So it's very high stakes, a lot of responsibility, but very privileged to be, when we do things right, when we can have an impact. It's really special to see what can actually happen.
And if someone's listening who wants to start a mission-led organisation, what advice would you give them even just to start?
Yeah, I would say two important things. One, in advocacy, in community organising, we talk about this is something I've really been learning about in the past couple of weeks. Is think about your sphere of influence. What things can you control? Where do you have strengths? What little things can you do now? Like one thing could be reflecting on your life story, on your experiences. Where do you have expertise that other people don't? The second thing I think is one thing that has always stuck with me. There was a lecturer here. I did a course with UNSW founders, and the biggest takeaway I got from him was focus on the problem. And yeah, if you have a good problem, then you've got a good business. Understand the problem. Who are the people facing this problem? What are their pain points? Yeah, really get into the details of it. Don't start with the solution, start with the problem.
If people want to get involved in youth praxis, how might they get involved?
It starts with, we have this idea in, how do you make systemic change, or how do you make a kind of impact in an issue that is so large that it feels impossible. I think it starts with storytelling and reflecting on your own journey. Obviously, not everyone has been in youth detention before, but think about your story. Think about your perception of youth crime, of people who have been through this kind of thing, and where do you sit with it? What do you actually think about it? In terms of practical things to support Praxis Youth right now, we're always kind of looking for volunteers. We run workshops with our young people around life skills. We always looking for volunteers to kind of help out with those.
So is the best way to get in touch with you via your website?
Yeah, or email me. Yeah.
Okay, email you. So if we sat down again in, say, 10 years' time, what would be the dream situation, the report back to me about what's happened with Praxis Youth?
Well, our approach is that we think that you need innovation and you need programs. You need stuff on the ground level. You need to be doing the kind of hard yards, working with the young people. You also need work from the top down, systemic work, influencing our decision makers, and you need both of them to kind of come and meet in the middle. In 10 years' time, I'd really like to see our program be established. We want this to be a government-funded program across New South Wales and eventually across Australia. We don't want to see young people leaving custody into dangerous situations that are just leading them to go back into custody. We want to see this kind of punitive view gone from top down, a view of supporting young people, not labelling them as criminals and, lock them up, throw away the key.
If you got to go back to that first night in youth detention and meet young Michael there, is there something that you'd like to say to him?
Yeah, I think I would say that, there is a future ahead, and there are great things to come, but you need to put in the work every day. I've always been a strong believer of, do the little things right every single day and the big things will come. I think that's what I'll tell him. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it, Michael.
Thanks.
So that was We Built This Thing, and we just heard from Michael Kwan, the founder of Praxis Youth.